This is Weirdly Enough, your regular podcast for strange stories and amazing facts, delivered straight to your favorite podcast directory and at weirdlyenough.com. Now, here are your hosts, Andy and Len.
We really can't thank people enough for all the positive comments that have come in since we started doing the podcast again last week. That one's still up there if you go to weirdlyenough.com or wherever you get your podcasts, to search for Weirdly Enough. It was all about number stations and all those strange goings on at number stations. So I'm joined by Len. I'm Andy Kane. I'm joined by Len Johnson. How's things, sir?
Not too bad. Can I just make a quick observation?
What's that?
Can we do merch? Because you know the way like all these podcast people have merch?
Merch? Yeah. Like,
it's like, you check out my merch.
Maybe you want to go off and do that?
Well, apparently, I don't know. Right, you know the way we could organise that, yeah? Because you know the way the young people, they all like t-shirts and baseball caps and fleeces and stuff.
Well,
that's what the kids are onto.
We'll look into it.
You got like branded merch.
We'll look into it, certainly. Yes.
Yeah. How big one?
So he just threw that one out there.
Keep it spontaneous. Yeah. Keep it spontaneous. Yeah.
We could start all over again, but we're not going to. Yeah, I think a bit of merch would be good. There are those kind of things that you upload your logo and then just say, go and buy your merch here. So yeah, we'll look into that. Yeah.
You always hear like these American podcasters, they always say, hey, check out the merch on teespring.com, which apparently is like flog t-shirts and that, you know.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think we're really famous enough for merch though.
Oh no, yeah.
You know, I think we need to build up more of a following. Also,
we get that Weirdly Enough logo out there. Remember, we're on Facebook, Weirdly Enough Podcast. Search for us there. Also, Weirdly Enough PC is our Twitter handle. So this week it's all about the mud flood, which I don't know anything about. Apart from, I think it's. Did people say it was some sort of great reset?
Well, you see, to be honest, I have mixed feelings about even doing this as an episode,
right? For
several different reasons.
Why?
Well, this is a great contrast to last week when we did number stations.
Yeah.
Because number station, right? You see, I think broadly speaking, the topics of Weirdly Enough can be divided into two kinds.
Yes.
Things that are real, but weird.
Yeah.
And things that are just
well, how do you know?
Cry.
Yeah, it's a theory, and we must explore all theories, even if we're not going to agree with them.
Well, put it this way, I would say, in my opinion, normally I'm quite credulous,
right?
But not today. I'm coming out as quite a skeptic of the mud flood theory.
Okay, well, let's take it from the top. When did this theory start to emerge? First of all,
about 2 years ago.
Oh right, okay, yeah. Well, it's a long running thing.
It's literally an internet based thing. I only came across it about 2 years ago when it was kicking off.
Is it like the flat earthers that had come about the time that all that became big?
It's slightly after flat earth. It's both newer than flat earth and, in my opinion, crazier than flat earth. And the right, you know the way people get a bit weird about flat earth?
Yes. Like,
you know, a bit hostile and a bit kind of weird and argumentative and stuff. These guys are even worse.
Right.
Like I said, it just suddenly, because I've always been an aficionado of all things weird. So on my YouTube feed, all this weird stuff about mud flood started to crop up.
Yes.
And these guys making these weird videos about giants and about, you know, architecture and whatnot. And basically, in a nutshell, the idea is that every couple of 100 years, you know, the guys that sit around a big table that rule everything,
the government,
beyond the government, them, basically them, do a reset.
Okay, right.
Only the way they do it is by engineering a mud flood.
Mud flood, right.
So basically, the theory is the whole of the planet is covered by loads of mud.
Right.
Every sort of 100 years or so.
And everything sinks under the mud.
And it's complete. And civilization, or population, is massively reduced to like a very small amount. Loads of people are wiped out, and civilization starts again.
Why is none of it in like history books?
Because they control the history books.
Of course, yeah. Well, yeah, that's good. Yeah,
you know, obviously. And basically, they have loads of things like you know the way in old photographs, you often, like from the 19th century, you see like empty streets.
Yes.
And apparently it's to do with, at the early days of photography, they couldn't capture people walking.
Okay.
Because it took, so,
so there's actually people moving through the frame.
So that's why in the old days people had to stay for ages, like stock. But in those days you couldn't like photograph like people walking up the street because it just sort of disappears.
Yeah.
So that's why if you could see like old pictures from the 1850s and stuff, the city streets like empty. So there's like a logical reason for that. But in their idea, it's like, oh, everyone was wiped out by the mud flood.
Yeah.
And there's different theories about how this is done or why it's done. But basically the idea is that there's an ancient civilization called Tartaria.
Right, okay.
Which was a real place. I mean, there was a place called Tartaria. It was like the Tartars, in Asia. But because people's map making skills weren't really good back in the day, quite often on old maps you'll see Tartaria more or less covering all of Asia.
Okay. Yeah.
And the reason was because back in the day they didn't really know what was going on up there.
Is there a region of Romania, is that right?
No, that's Transylvania.
Well, there's Tartaria, Romania.
Oh, it could be. Oh, there you go. I stand corrected.
Yeah.
Said the man on the orthopedic show.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, so basically you get all these maps. It just says Tartaria.
Okay.
And basically, the idea was this was a highly advanced civilization.
Yes.
And they think, like cathedrals were like actually power stations.
Right.
Because these guys had like access to some sort of free energy.
Yeah.
But they're not very specific about how it's actually, it just sort of happens.
Yeah. Well, didn't Tesla?
They tie Tesla into it,
alright,
but in a really vague way, and they don't actually explain how. They kind of imply that he kind of knew about this somehow.
Old Elon Musk isn't involved in it, is
he? It could be, I don't know. But one of the things they say is, but there was a worldwide civilization, because how come you go to all these countries and like New York and Australia and places and all these old buildings look exactly the same.
I think New York's a country though.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not like, they don't just say, it's like fashion.
Right, okay.
Or anything like that. The other thing is they always talk about the Tartarian giants.
Right.
And they'll have pictures, right, back in the day obviously you had pictures of people that were maybe like unusual looking, unusually tall.
Yeah.
And then you had lots of figs and stuff, so that they say that all the Tartarians were all these sort of giant blokes.
Yeah.
That like, really advanced civilizations, and then somehow, even though they were massively inferior, they somehow managed to topple the Tartarians and bury it all under mud.
Right.
And it is crazy. I mean, but it's become like it's like the new flat Earth.
Why do archaeologists not find all this?
It's because they own the archaeologists.
Yeah.
You see, it's all very vague.
I remember hearing about fossils once, and the reason you don't get many fossils is rocks move, and rocks will actually go back into the magma of the earth.
Yeah.
And there's basically like limestone and basalt. I'm totally making this up, but I'm totally getting this from somewhere. But one type of rock is heavier than the other.
Yeah.
So it sinks, and the other one goes to the top. And if a fossil happened to be in the type that went to the top, which I think was the limestone, I'm not sure, then you'll find fossils. But that's why you don't find that many fossils, because the earth kind of eats up. See,
these guys would say, it's the mud flood. It's the reset that was reset. And they would argue we're in, it's important, the truth about they gets out now.
The truth will out.
Because we're due another mud flood reset.
Oh, right, okay.
Now the weird thing is, this whole thing literally, there's no references to this before 2017. Like literally nothing.
Yeah.
And there's no books about it. There's loads of threads and things like Reddit and things like that, and forums and nothing else.
Has anybody been able to track down the person that came up with this, Lunacy?
Well, there's different people. In August of 2016, videos began to appear on YouTube about the mud flood idea. Now there's a guy here, Philip Drusen, And he apparently has been posting videos about a mud flood since August of 2016, and there was no interest at all.
Yeah.
Nobody. Everyone was all flat Earth and Donald Trump, and didn't really care about it until January 2019. It just exploded.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere. And yeah, it is a really bizarre thing, but it's a bit like flat Earth. Or it's a bit like, have you ever heard of a concept called the Grand Unified Conspiracy Theory?
Not really.
Well, basically, it's the idea of it's like an overarching conspiracy theory that you can throw anything on it.
Right. Okay.
Because it's just so big and so crazy.
So yeah,
just fire it all in. So
you
can fire in, the Nazis. You can fire in aliens. You can fire in the mud flood, flat Earth.
Yeah.
Whatever. Disney. I don't care. Anything you want. But it seems to have taken over from flat Earth to a certain extent. But it's the guys around it are very hot arguments about it, and they'll take it very seriously, and they get very annoyed.
Right.
Like I've actually seen people talking about Belfast City Hall as an example of ancient Tartarian architecture.
And who is
so advanced,
people
man.
on Reddit, or have people found this and said, "Oh, that's
Americans"?
Right.
This is the other side of things. It's quite an American thing.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any traction in Europe for the mud flood theory. It's a very American.
Probably the same with flat Earth, really, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's probably more, and the vast amount of anti-vaxxers and so many conspiracies are out of America. Yeah.
I think what it could be, my theory is because America is a very young country.
Yeah.
And they don't really understand about like kind of history and how it would work, and because their thing is
we're gonna get complaints.
I know, right? You say in America, right? No building is going to be more than about 200 years old.
Yeah.
So it kind of ties into that kind of idea of it was there's nothing here before, and it was a reset.
I was in a museum in America, and there was a thing about the founding of the state that it was in. I won't say where it was this a state. I said the state was founded in 18 something or 16 something. And I said to the person I was with, the pub I would go to from time to time, 20 years older than that.
Yeah.
The pub I drink in, 20 years older than that.
But you see, if you're living outside Las Vegas,
and
everywhere is like about 20 years old, you would you'd struggle to understand the concept of things being really old.
Mud floods.
So you'd think it was all a mud flood.
Reset.
Now, there's an interesting thing. One example is Seattle has sort of added fuel to the fire of the mud flood.
Right.
Because at one point about 100 years ago, Seattle raised some of its street levels, which buried like a lot of ground floors.
To
reduce the steepness of some of the city's hills, because it was the hills were incredibly steep.
Right.
So they just moved stuff about to make it kind of more livable.
Yeah.
And basically that's sort of kicked off as well when people started driving more, and there's things where sort of advancing that way.
Yeah.
But they the mud flood guys would use that as an example because of you get the first floor, what's really the ground floor, that's been buried.
Yeah.
They say it's buried by the mud flood, man. Buried by the mud flood.
There was a game that I'm trying to remember the name of it. I played it a while back, and it was, people will hopefully write in and tell us this, but you were in this submerged city, and everything, the water level was really high and up to the first floor, and you went about in a wee boat, and it was like weird monsters and stuff coming out at you. It was kind of like 1950s film noir style. It was a funny game, but it kind of lost its appeal quite quickly. I can't remember what it was called, but that's kind of bit like Seattle almost,
Well, one controversial thought that I'll throw in there is a lot of states in America have recently liberalised their policy on cannabis.
Right, yeah.
So I'll leave that one there.
That was it, the Sinking City. It was called the Sinking City, I think.
So maybe they've just been settling out playing video games and smoking a smoke.
Perhaps.
And sort of come up with crazy ideas. Have you ever heard of Robert Wadlow or Wado or whatever you call him? He was the tallest verified person on Earth.
Right.
He got to 8'11".
Oh.
He's nearly 9 foot tall.
Yeah.
He was born in 1918, and I think he died when he was in his 20s.
Right.
Because he had some sort of, like, it was like a pituitary gland problem or something like that. But he wasn't very well. But they would take photographs. He was in Guinness Book of Records, tallest man ever. But they would take pictures of Robert Waldrow, and they don't say who he is, and they say he's a Tartarian giant.
A Tartarian giant.
But like it's Robert Waldrow, like
very odd.
So and I think that's about it. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. It's in a way I can see the appeal. I mean, it's very. I would say probably it ties in with sort of a biblical idea of like the flood and that sort of idea of the apocalypse and things being reset, but yes, it's an interesting concept. So
very good,
a bit crazy, but I just hope we don't offend people because they do get very annoyed. They don't like you making light of it.
Yes,
it's like the flat earthers. They're the same. They're very.
I know conspiracy people who will send you a YouTube video that's about 3 hours long to watch this, and if you don't watch it, then they scream at you.
Well, yeah, you say if you look at Mud Flood on YouTube, I mean, you could just spend the rest of your life watching Mud Flood. Look at Berlin Zoo, man. It's like a big giant power station. That's literally that's the sort of thing you'll get.
We'll be back in a minute or two with some snippets. So we were talking last week about the Olympic Games. It's kind of over now, but you remember last week we were talking about those anti-sex beds. You were telling us all about the rumours about the anti-sex beds. And we were talking about how the competitors were given condoms and asked to bring them home as souvenirs rather than use them because of social distancing. But there's been this rumour going around anyway that the IOC have installed these anti-sex beds. They're made out of cardboard and they'll collapse if there's any sudden movement made on them. But I'm from Newtownards anyway, so it's a town in Northern Ireland. Newtownards have their very own Olympics competitor, Rhys McClenaghan. He's been competing as a gymnast for the Republic of Ireland, and he's debunked the dodgy bunk rumour. In a social media post, Rhys can be seen jumping vigorously on the bed before telling his audience that although the beds are made of cardboard, they will withstand plenty of action. And then he goes on to say it's fake news. Fake news. Yes, fake news. So there you are. I know, here's a word you just love, the new normal. Don't you just love that one?
Oh God, yeah.
It's brought a lot of challenges to churches. Of course, people haven't been able to congregate, so physical services are out of the question. Well, we're out of the question anyway. Most members of the clergy have adapted to use technology to present their church services. Another thing that suffered is the sacrament of Holy Communion. Of course, passing bread and wine, or Ribena, around isn't allowed. But one Church of England vicar has come up with a novel way to give bread to parishioners whilst adhering to government protocol. Reverend Eileen Harrop from County Durham has used her Chinese heritage as an inspiration on how to pass around the sacrament by using chopsticks to pass the bread. Reverend Eileen said, "I thought, why can't I use a long pair of chopsticks, real bread rather than wafers, and drop it into the communicant's hand?" So there you are, very good. But I'm thinking they could do it with prawn crackers. Give everybody a prawn cracker.
That'll be quite tasty,
yeah. And apparently breaking gas can be considered a provocative act. That's according to the police in Austria. They fined a man £500 for what they described as letting go a massive intestinal wind, apparently with full intent. Apparently the man had been provoking officers before the incident. He does, of course, have the right to appeal.
Well, I suppose it could be classed as assault.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think they're right there to do that. Cambridgeshire now, the County Council were incredibly proud of their new initiative of a Dutch-style roundabout that gave priority to every road user's favourite person, the cyclist. It cost the taxpayer about £2.3 million, but the council even planned an opening ceremony for the junction. However, disaster struck the day before the event when a car crashed into the roundabout, and it remained closed for a few days as contractors assessed the damage. And finally, a mother's now facing jail herself after getting caught trying to dig a tunnel so her son could escape jail. The 51-year-old Ukrainian woman rented out a house near the jail and went to work in a tunnel on a silent electric scooter. Those electric, they should be condemned down to into tunnels, those electric scooters. They're menaces. But she completed the work during the hours of darkness, so not to arouse suspicion. She didn't do a bad job either. She used shovels and pickaxes to dig a 10-foot deep tunnel which ran 35 feet towards the prison walls. A local resident said perhaps she was a miner's daughter.
That's quite impressive.
Yeah, so there you are. Those things are annoying, those electric scooters.
Oh, yeah, e-scooters, yeah.
And they're not strictly legal in Northern Ireland. I know they have rental schemes and stuff in some cities in the UK, and I'm sure across the world, but the police don't recognise them because they're not a road vehicle. They're not they shouldn't be on the pavement. They're not a bicycle, so the police are saying we could confiscate them.
They can be quite dangerous if you get hit by them as well.
Yeah. I've been on pavements coming out of shops and somebody's going past you at about 15 miles an hour, standing there like that. Well, there you go. We'll be back again next week with more, hopefully, unless they lock us down.
Hopefully not.
And if they do that, we'll phone it in. We'll do something. We'll keep the podcast going. We're really enjoying doing them. Thanks. Remember, you can get in touch, podcast@weirdlyenough.com, our email, or look us up on the socials. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Weirdly Enough. Remember to subscribe to get the latest edition as soon as it drops. And don't forget to leave a review. Email us about anything we've discussed or with your own weird tale at podcast@weirdlyenough.com.